In search of sustainable inner peace, genuine freedom, and meaning, humanity has turned to various philosophical systems throughout millennia. Among the countless streams of thought that have shaped world culture, Stoicism holds a special, enduring place, an ancient philosophy born on the streets of Athens over 2,000 years ago. Stoicism offers a powerful, deeply practical, and applicable approach to life, oriented not towards fleeting happiness that depends on external circumstances, but towards achieving a state the Stoics called eudaimonia. Eudaimonia, often translated as flourishing, well-being, or a life well lived, meant something much more reliable for the Stoics than mere pleasure or success. It was a state of profound contentment and harmony, independent of the whims of external fortune, illness, or public opinion. Stoicism does not offer a utopia of an easy life devoid of difficulties or suffering. On the contrary, it acknowledges the inevitability of trials but teaches the art of remaining internally steadfast, preserving clarity of mind and dignity even in the face of the most severe adversity. The key to this art, according to the Stoics, lies in gaining control over the only sphere that is truly within our complete power, our own thoughts, judgments, desires, aversions, and, consequently, our actions. This philosophy, having survived centuries and continuing to influence modern minds, has reached us thanks to the works of outstanding thinkers whose life paths were as diverse as their profound insights. Among them is the former slave who, through study and self-improvement, became a respected teacher of wisdom, Epictetus, whose Discourses and Enchiridion are invaluable guides to Stoic practice. A crucial contribution was also made by the statesman, playwright, and advisor to the emperor, Seneca, whose Letters to Lucilius are replete with practical advice and insightful observations on human nature. And, of course, the philosopher Emperor Marcus Aurelius, whose Meditations represent his personal notes and exercises in applying Stoic principles amidst colossal responsibility and personal suffering. Stoicism, therefore, offers not merely a set of abstract metaphysical or ethical ideas, but a living guide to action, a detailed system of exercises for training the mind, strengthening character, and cultivating resilience. At the heart of Stoicism lies the aspiration to live in accordance with nature, understood both as the universal, ordered, and rational nature of the cosmos and our own human nature, which, according to the Stoics, is unique in its capacity for reason and is inherently social. In our time, when the world is overflowing with a constant stream of information, endless comparisons on social media, high expectations, both our own and others, and inevitable disappointments, many people find themselves at the mercy of anxiety, stress, and a feeling of helplessness. We tend to worry excessively about things over which we have no real control, what others think, world events, the outcome of complex situations. We cling to material things, social status, certain relationships, or an idealized future, which inevitably change, disappear, or prove unattainable. In this context, Stoicism offers a truly radical and liberating solution. Stop wasting precious energy on vain attempts to control the uncontrollable and learn to wisely let go of what is not a true, reliable good and does not depend on us. This is not a call to passivity, apathy, or indifference to the world and other people. On the contrary, it requires the active and conscious cultivation of wisdom, courage, and self-control, which allows us to direct our life energy where it can yield real benefit, towards the development of our character, towards our meaningful actions in the world, and thus achieve deep and lasting inner tranquility, ataraxia, which cannot be disturbed by external storms. Let us now examine in more detail 7 key principles of Stoicism which, being not only understood on an intellectual level but also consistently implemented in daily life through constant practice, allow one to gradually master this difficult but supremely liberating art, the art of not caring about the superfluous, about what drains and burdens us, and calmly letting go of what is not within our power or is not a true good. These principles are not separate rules, they are deeply interconnected, supporting and strengthening each other, forming a unified, powerful, and holistic approach to life. Principle 1. Accept what is outside your control, the dichotomy of control. The foundation of all Stoic philosophy, and undoubtedly the most fundamental and starting principle for anyone beginning their path to sustainable inner peace, is the clear, unambiguous division of all things in the world into 2 fundamentally different spheres. This dichotomy was formulated by Epictetus with utmost clarity and conciseness, becoming the cornerstone of all subsequent Stoic practice. He declared, "Some things are within our power, while others are not." To the first category, things that are entirely within our power and depend only on us, belong our opinions, judgments, our impulses, our desires, our aversions, our intentions, essentially, everything that is a result of our own internal mental activity, our evaluations, and our free choice. This is our inner citadel, impervious to external forces. To the second category, things that are not within our power, belong our body, its health, its aging, its illnesses, our property, its presence, preservation, loss, our reputation, what other people think of us, our social position, external events, weather, economic crises, the actions of others, the outcomes of most situations, the past, and the future. This is the external sphere, essentially everything that is not our direct, immediate choice and judgment. Deep reflection on this principle truly opens our eyes to the true source of most of our suffering and anxieties. Day after day, we worry, get upset, experience anger, fear, or anxiety precisely because of things over which we have no or extremely limited influence in reality. We try to control how other people perceive us, even though their opinions are formed based on their own experiences, prejudices, and judgments, regardless of our will. We torment ourselves with worry about the outcome of some matter or project, even though its result depends on a multitude of external factors beyond our control, in addition to our efforts. We get angry at the weather, traffic jams, flight delays, even though we cannot physically change these natural phenomena or logistical processes. The Stoics argued that such activity is not just ineffective and useless, it is profoundly destructive, as it irreversibly squanders our most valuable energy, generates a cascade of negative emotions, undermines our peace, and, most importantly, distracts us from the little that we truly can control, our inner world and our reactions. Epictetus taught that suffering and unhappiness arise not from external events themselves, but precisely when we confuse these 2 categories, when we assign things outside our power the status of true goods or terrible evils, and when we vainly try to subject them to our will or retain them. For example, worrying about someone else's opinion is absolutely pointless and harmful, as it is entirely outside our control. By constantly trying to please everyone, we not only lose touch with ourselves but also fail to gain a stable foundation, for the opinions of others are changeable, contradictory, and depend on a multitude of external factors. True happiness, eudaimonia, and unhappiness, according to this principle, are determined not by external circumstances themselves, which are, in essence, indifferent from the perspective of true good, but by our judgments about them, which are completely within our power. If we judge the loss of property as an absolute, crushing misfortune, we will suffer deeply and prolonged. If, however, we judge it as an event that does not affect our inner essence, our capacity for reason and virtue, and which can also provide an opportunity to display courage, resilience, and resourcefulness, then our suffering will be minimal or absent altogether. Practicing this principle requires constant vigilance and self-examination. Daily, when faced with a situation that causes worry, irritation, or any other negative emotion, you should immediately stop and ask yourself the simple but fundamental Stoic question: is this phenomenon, this circumstance, this person, this outcome entirely within my power? Can I control or change this solely through my own efforts? If the answer is honestly yes, e.g., can I control my decision to read this book, or can I control my level of effort in this task, then focus all your energy on the action and exert every effort in that sphere. If the answer is no, e.g., can I control whether my presentation will please my boss, or can I control whether my loved one will recover, then acknowledge this fact with full acceptance and consciously let go of the desire for control over that specific aspect. This is not a call to passivity regarding things that are partially within our power. We cannot guarantee the success of a project, but we can control the quality of our efforts and our reaction to setbacks. It is about ceasing to emotionally and mentally struggle with what is entirely or significantly dependent on external factors beyond our control. Marcus Aurelius, constantly reflecting on the vanity of worldly life and his place in the grand order of the cosmos, repeatedly returned to this foundational idea in his writings. He wrote, "You can rid yourself of many things that burden you if you consider almost everything that is outside your power as insignificant. And also, you can be happy if you accept that everything happens according to nature's will." Here, nature's will is understood not as providence in a theological sense, but as the inevitable, natural course of events in the cosmos, of which we are a part and which we, as rational beings, should strive to understand and accept. His words can be interpreted as a powerful call for assent to what happens, for understanding that every event, no matter how good or bad it may seem to us at first glance, is a necessary link in the chain of world processes and part of a larger order beyond our control. Accepting this fact frees us from the painful and meaningless struggle with reality itself. Applying the dichotomy of control and practice can be organized in various ways. An effective method is keeping a Stoic journal. At the end of the day, or in moments of intense emotion, you can take a sheet of paper and divide it into two columns: within my power and outside my power. As you list events, problems, or sources of worry, strictly allocate them to these columns. Soon, you will be surprised to notice how much time, energy, and emotional effort you spend worrying about what ended up in the second column. Over time, by regularly performing this exercise, you train your mind to automatically recognize where you should focus your attention and efforts, on your reactions, judgments, intentions, actions, and what you should calmly, without struggle, let go of. Ceasing to worry about the uncontrollable is not a sign of weakness or indifference, but a manifestation of wisdom and strength. It is an act of strategically releasing inner energy and focusing it on what is truly important and what you can change, your character and your meaningful, virtuous actions. Principle 2. Practice amor fati, love of fate. The second principle of Stoicism, being closely related to the fundamental acceptance of the uncontrollable, Principle 1, goes much further than simple assent. It calls not only for accepting what happens in our lives, with all its difficulties, joys, losses, and gains, but also for finding deep meaning in it, seeing something necessary in every event, and, moreover, learning to truly love our fate, whatever it may be. Although the term amor fati, Latin for love of fate, gained wide currency and particular resonance through the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche, its roots run deep in the Stoic worldview. The Stoics believed that everything that happens in the cosmos, including the events of our personal lives, is part of a rational, ordered, and interconnected whole. Consequently, every event, even one that seems unfavorable, painful, or unjust to us at first glance, is a necessary link in the universal chain of cause and effect and serves the overall harmony and order of nature. A detailed explanation of the principle of amor fati reveals its powerful transformative potential. Instead of resisting circumstances that have already occurred or are in the process of unfolding, the Stoics urge active and meaningful assent to reality. This is not passive fatalism, or resigned inaction in the face of the inevitable, as it is sometimes mistakenly interpreted. On the contrary, it is an assertion of deep faith that everything that happens to us, including the most severe difficulties and trials, can be used for our highest good, for developing our inner strength, shaping our character, and exercising virtue, which, as we shall see later, is the only true good. Marcus Aurelius vividly expressed this idea in his Meditations, when he wrote, "Everything that happens, happens justly. If you look closely, you will find it." He saw every event as fitting for the universe as a whole, as a necessary element of its functioning, and as fitting personally for himself, provided he approached it with the right mindset and readiness to use it as material for virtuous action. Justice here is understood not in the usual human sense of distributing rewards and punishments, but as correspondence to the universal laws of nature and the cosmos. Seneca masterfully described the difference between a person who resists the current of fate and one who consciously follows it. In one of his letters, he writes, "Fate guides the willing and drags the unwilling." This metaphor is strikingly illustrative. A person who fiercely resists the inevitable expends a colossal, exhausting amount of energy, experiences the sharp pain of disappointment, anger, fear, bitterness, but ultimately ends up where the course of events leads them anyway, only worn out, broken, and full of negative emotions. The one who consciously assents to what is happening, who sees in it not a personal obstacle but simply part of the path, something that can be used, not only preserves their inner freedom and peace but can also extract maximum benefit from the situation, manifesting and strengthening their best qualities: courage, patience, resourcefulness, wisdom. Loving fate does not mean rejoicing in misfortunes, but it means seeing opportunities for growth and self-improvement in every trial, accepting everything that comes as valuable material for building one's character and one's life, rather than as a destructive force to be resisted. The practice of amor fati begins with adopting the right mindset and constantly reminding oneself of this principle. Each morning, as you prepare yourself for the coming day, you can repeat something like, "I accept everything this day will bring, whatever it may be. I will meet all events with an open heart and a clear mind, being ready to use them as an opportunity for action in full accordance with my nature, rational and virtuous." This does not mean wishing for difficulties, but being ready to meet any event, pleasant or unpleasant, without inner rebellion, with a readiness to use it for one's development. When something painful or unpleasant happens, e.g., the loss of something, failure in an undertaking, illness, betrayal, instead of the destructive question, "Why did this happen to me? How unfair," the Stoic asks a constructive question: "Now that this has happened, how can I best use this circumstance to develop my virtue, to manifest resilience, wisdom, or justice?" Applying this principle can involve regular meditation on the inevitability and impermanence of all things. Visualize difficulties, those that worry you in the future, or those that have already happened in the past or are happening now. Instead of focusing on the pain, injustice, or losses, try to see these events as an integral, natural part of the human experience, as a kind of training provided to you by nature or the course of events so that you can become a stronger, wiser, more resilient, and courageous person. Learn to accept them not with the resignation of the defeated who submits to their fate, but with the active assent of a participant who understands that every challenge is a chance to manifest their inner strength and virtue. Love of fate is the highest form of acceptance that allows you to completely let go of regrets about the past, "If only I had acted differently," and paralyzing fear of the future, "What if the worst happens?" Because everything that has happened was necessary, and everything that will happen can be turned into material for our development, provided we meet it with the right mindset. This frees the mind from endless, useless speculation and allows you to focus entirely on how to live meaningfully and act virtuously right now, no matter what. Principle 3. Cultivate virtue as the only good. The third, and perhaps the most radical and distinctive, principle of Stoicism concerns their unique value system and is a direct consequence of the first two. The Stoics asserted with absolute certainty that the only true and reliable good for a person is virtue, that is, a life lived in full accordance with reason, our own human nature, and the universal nature of the cosmos. They identified four main, cardinal virtues around which everything else revolves: wisdom, the ability to make right judgments and decisions, to understand the nature of things; justice, right relationship with others; fairness, justice in actions; courage, steadfastness in the face of difficulties, danger, pain, the ability to act in accordance with reason despite fear; and temperance, self-control, restraint, discipline in desires and actions. Everything else that is traditionally considered good or evil in everyday life, health, wealth, beauty, fame, high social position, pleasures, as well as their opposites, illness, poverty, hardship, disgrace, the Stoics called indifferent, adiaphora. These indifferent things were further divided into preferred, e.g., health, wealth, good reputation, and non-preferred, illness, poverty, bad reputation. However, the key and revolutionary point was that neither, in the opinion of the Stoics, is a true good or a true evil in an absolute sense, because they do not determine the quality of our inner life and cannot make us truly happy or unhappy. A detailed explanation of this principle clearly shows why it is so important for developing the ability not to care about the superfluous and to let go of attachments. The Stoics reason very logically and pragmatically. A true good for a person must be something that is always accessible to them, that is completely within their power, and that cannot be taken away from them by any external forces or circumstances. Can wealth be taken away? Yes, through theft, crisis, confiscation. Can health be taken away? Yes, through illness or accident. Can a good reputation be taken away? Yes, through slander, misunderstanding, or simply at the whim of the crowd. Therefore, none of these things can be a true, reliable good, because if our happiness, peace, and contentment depend on their presence or preservation, we will constantly be in a state of fear of losing them. Our inner peace will be held hostage by external circumstances which, as we already know from Principle 1, are outside our power. It is precisely the endless worries about external things, how to become richer, achieve more status, keep one's property, avoid criticism, gain approval, that lead to chronic anxiety, envy of the more successful, bitterness from disappointments, fear of loss. All these external things are unstable, fleeting, and never completely under our control, which makes the attempt to build one's happiness upon them fundamentally doomed. Seneca constantly returned to this theme in his letters, clearly stating, "There is nothing good but what is honorable." By honorable, honestum, he meant precisely what is virtuous, what corresponds to our rational nature. He taught that only a life consistently dedicated to the development and manifestation of virtue makes a person truly free, independent, and happy. If your main aspiration in life is to be wise in your judgments, just in your relationships with others, courageous in the face of difficulties, and temperate in your desires, then no external loss, no external misfortune can deprive you of this highest good. You can lose all your property, but remain just in need and courageous in poverty. You can be deprived of liberty and imprisoned, but you can maintain clarity of mind, wisdom, and self-control, temperance, even in confinement. Your virtue is your inner, impregnable citadel, your true, inalienable possession. By focusing your attention and efforts on your actions and intentions, on how you react to the world and act within it, rather than on what the world gives or takes away from you, you gradually gain inner peace and confidence that cannot be disturbed by external events, no matter how dramatic they may be. Epictetus masterfully emphasized this aspect of inner freedom, telling his students, "If you wish to be free, desire nothing that depends on others." To desire wealth is to depend on luck, the economy, and other people. To desire fame and recognition is to depend on the fickle opinion of the crowd. To desire only pleasures is to depend on external stimuli and circumstances. To desire to be virtuous, however, means to depend only on your own choice, your efforts, and your reason, on what is completely within your power. Practicing the cultivation of virtue as the only good requires constant, attentive regard for your motives, thoughts, and actions. Daily, especially at the end of the day, a Stoic can perform a kind of inventory of their actions, asking themselves, was I virtuous today in my actions and judgments? Did I act wisely in this specific situation? Did I show justice towards my loved ones, colleagues, even strangers? Was I able to show courage when faced with an unpleasant task or a frightening situation? Did I maintain temperance in my desires, words, and actions? This regular assessment of one's actions from the perspective of virtue, rather than external success or approval, gradually helps to let go of excessive attachment to the material, status-related, and external. If you know that you acted from virtuous motives and applied reasonable effort, the outcome of the matter becomes less critical, because you have already realized your true good, you acted as a virtuous person. Gradually, you begin to worry less about what you might lose from the sphere of the indifferent, money, possessions, praise, because you deeply understand that the most valuable, most reliable, and most important thing, your inner virtue, always remains with you, inaccessible to external misfortunes. Principle 4. Practice negative visualization, premeditatio malorum. The fourth principle of Stoicism is a practice that may seem deeply paradoxical and even pessimistic in the context of the modern cult of positive thinking, but which is one of the most powerful and effective tools in the Stoic arsenal. This is the practice of negative visualization, known in Latin as premeditatio malorum, which literally translates to premeditation of evils, or reflection on possible misfortunes. Seneca was one of the most prominent proponents of this method. He advised his readers and himself, think ahead about everything that can happen. Banish fear from yourself by not allowing yourself to be caught off guard. The idea of this practice is not at all about sinking into despondency, cultivating pessimism, or expecting the worst with fatalistic resignation. Its true purpose is to prepare one's mind and psyche for potential difficulties, losses, failures, illnesses, or disappointments, so that if they actually occur, they do not catch us by surprise, do not cause a shock reaction, panic, or a crushing emotional blow. A detailed explanation of the therapeutic effect of negative visualization shows why the Stoics attached such importance to it. A significant part of our anxiety and fear of the future stems precisely from its uncertainty and the potential for it to bring suffering or loss. This fear of the unknown, of what might go wrong, often paralyzes us, restricts action, and generates chronic anxiety. By consciously imagining potentially worst-case scenarios, losing a job, a serious illness, one's own or that of loved ones, the collapse of important relationships, serious financial difficulties, public disgrace, even one's own death or the death of loved ones, we gradually strip these events of some of their frightening power, which stems from unexpectedness and uncertainty. When the mind has already lived through this situation, albeit in the safe space of thought and imagination, the real event, if it does occur, will not cause such a strong, uncontrollable shock or panic. We will be better prepared to meet it, less prone to catastrophizing, and will be able to maintain greater clarity of mind for making rational decisions in changed circumstances. This practice helps to significantly reduce the emotional impact of potential adversities and teaches one to gradually let go of overwhelming fear of them. Moreover, premeditatio malorum is paradoxically a powerful tool for increasing gratitude for what we have now. By consciously reflecting on how much of what we take for granted and value, health, our loved ones, our possessions, our opportunities, is actually temporary, fragile, and can be lost at any moment, we begin to see these things in a completely different light. Health seems unshakable until we imagine illness, weakness, pain. Loved ones seem eternal and always available until we reflect on their or our mortality, on the possibility of separation. By imagining potential loss, we learn to more deeply appreciate what we have, here and now, in the present moment, and simultaneously gradually reduce our emotional attachment to future possession or preservation of these things. Marcus Aurelius, although he did not use the same Latin term, also practiced a kind of negative visualization, integrating it into his Stoic worldview. He reminded himself, think of what can happen, but not as a misfortune, but as part of nature. For him, potential difficulties or losses were not a manifestation of the ill will of fate or a personal tragedy, but simply a natural manifestation of changeability and impermanence, which are fundamental characteristics of life and the cosmos. By accepting them as part of nature, he moved the potential problem from the category of personal misfortune requiring emotional protest into the category of objective, universal reality to which one can relate with understanding, calmness, and readiness. The practice of premeditatio malorum can be quite simple and take only a few minutes a day. Dedicate 5 to 10 minutes to consciously imagine one or more potential difficulties that worry you or are simply possible. It is important not just to imagine the event itself, but also how you, as a Stoic, will react to it. In this mental rehearsal, the key is to focus precisely on your inner response, on your ability to apply Stoic principles and virtues in the face of adversity. Repeat to yourself, if this happens, I can handle it. I have inner resources, wisdom, courage, justice, temperance, to meet it with dignity. My inner citadel, my character will remain unshaken, regardless of external losses. This exercise not only prepares the mind for the worst but also actively strengthens belief in one's inner strength, which, as we remember, is always within our power, again, a link to Principle 1. Applying this principle can be structured, for example, by creating a written list of potential, worst-case scenarios. For each item on the list, not only describe the event itself but also write down in detail how you can or should react to it, relying on your Stoic principles and cultivated virtues. For example, scenario: I fall seriously ill and cannot work. Response: I will accept this as a non-preferred indifferent, Principle 3, as part of the natural course of life and the aging of the body, Principle 2. I will not succumb to panic or self-pity, temperance, courage. I will focus on what I can control, my attitude towards the illness, my effort towards recovery, if possible, my maintenance of clarity of mind, wisdom. I will accept help from others with gratitude and remain just and patient in communicating with them. Justice. My value as a person does not depend on my physical state. Such systematic, disaster planning not only reduces the power of fear of the future but also gives a tangible sense of readiness and control over one's reaction, which is, in essence, the only true control available to a person. This helps to consciously let go of constant, oppressive anxiety about the uncertain future. Principle 5. Live in the present moment. The fifth Stoic principle, which finds surprising parallels in many other spiritual and philosophical traditions but has its specific Stoic flavor, strongly urges focusing all one's attention, energy, and awareness on the present moment. Emperor Marcus Aurelius, whose life was filled with enormous responsibility and external challenges, constantly reminded himself of this principle in his personal writings, recognizing its fundamental importance for maintaining inner peace and effectiveness. He wrote, "Do what is before you now, according to right reason, seriously, diligently, worthily, justly, and free yourself from all other concerns." He relentlessly repeated to himself that the past is gone irrevocably, it is impossible to change it, and expending effort on regretting it is a completely useless occupation. The future has not yet arrived, it may never arrive in the form in which we imagine it, and worrying about it means squandering life energy on something illusory, speculative, and, most importantly, outside our direct power. Again, Principle 1. The only thing we have in reality, the only point in time where we can truly act, apply our reason, and manifest virtue, is the present moment, the here and now. A detailed explanation of this principle reveals that the overwhelming majority of our anxiety, worry, unhappiness, and mental noise arises precisely because our mind constantly, uncontrollably wanders between the past, getting stuck in regrets, resentments, guilt, nostalgia, and the future, tormenting ourselves with fears, worry, excessive planning, unjustified expectations. As a result, we are rarely truly present where our body physically is and where our real life unfolds. Focusing all one's attention on the current task, on the current moment, on the current interaction with another person, on one's current sensations, this is an incredibly powerful way to free oneself from this never-ending flow of distracting, draining, and often negative thoughts. When your entire mind is focused on what you are doing right now, when you are completely immersed in the current reality, there is simply no room left for worrying about what has already passed or what has not yet arrived. The Stoics taught that the quality of our life is determined by the quality of our attention and our judgments. Again, Principles 1 and 3. If our attention is scattered, fixated on uncontrollable spheres, past, future, external events, opinions of others, we inevitably suffer and feel helpless. If, however, we consciously and disciplinedly direct it to what we are doing right now, using our reason, making rational decisions, and manifesting virtue in our actions, we gain clarity of thought, effectiveness in action, and a deep sense of meaningfulness. Seneca, reflecting on the fleetingness of life, noted that life seems short not because objectively little time is allotted to a person, but because we use this time extremely unwisely, wasting it on the pursuit of the indifferent, on empty pleasures, and, most importantly, on worrying about what does not depend on us and what is no longer or not yet. Life is long if you know how to use it, he wrote. To know how to use life in the Stoic sense means to live each of its moments consciously, purposefully, and virtuously. The practice of living in the present moment, or mindfulness in the Stoic manner, requires constant discipline and training of the mind. It is not always easy, as the mind has a natural tendency to wander and get distracted. One of the most accessible and universal tools for returning to the here and now is focusing on the breath. When you notice that your mind has wandered into memories of the past or anxious thoughts about the future, stop for a moment, take several deep, slow breaths, directing all your attention to the physical sensations of the movement of air and the diaphragm. This is a simple but effective anchor that brings you back to the present moment. Throughout the day, you can take short, conscious pauses to simply become aware of your physical presence, your bodily sensations, your surroundings, your current activity, becoming fully engaged in it. Applying this principle can be integrated into almost any daily routine. For example, during monotonous or routine tasks such as washing dishes, cleaning, walking, commuting, instead of using this time for endless planning of the future or replaying past conversations in your mind, try to fully concentrate on the process itself, the sensations of the water, the smells, the sounds, the movements of your body. Ask yourself questions. What am I doing right now? How can I do this in the best possible way? Which Stoic principles can I apply in this very moment? For example, if you are stuck in a long and irritating traffic jam, a situation that is entirely external and uncontrollable, instead of succumbing to anger, frustration, and anxiety, wasting energy on the useless, you can consciously shift your attention to the present moment. You can focus on your breath, accept the situation as a given, as part of the inevitable movement of the world, Principle 2, and use this time constructively, for listening to an educational audiobook, for calm reflection on Stoic ideas, or simply for practicing calmness and patience, manifesting virtue. By living consciously in the present moment, you effectively release the heavy burden of regrets about the past and the paralyzing fear of the future, focusing on the only point in time where you truly have power, now. Principle 6. Let go of attachments through reflection on mortality, memento mori. The sixth Stoic principle is the constant reflection on one's own mortality and the finitude of all things, known by the Latin expression memento mori, remember death. Like negative visualization, Principle 4, with which this principle is closely related and often practiced together, reflecting on death can seem gloomy, depressing, or even painful in a society that tends to avoid this topic. However, for the Stoics, memento mori is not a call to despondency or despair, but a most powerful tool for liberation from superficial worries, setting life priorities correctly, and achieving deep gratitude for the present moment. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of this stern but liberating truth: you can leave life right now. Let this determine what you do and say and think. This was not an invitation to fatalism or inaction but a powerful stimulus for a meaningful life, devoid of procrastination and empty hustle. A detailed explanation of this principle clearly shows how the awareness of our own finitude and the temporariness of everything around us helps to let go of painful attachments. We often cling to material things, social status, certain relationships, our plans for the distant future, our resentments and worries, as if we had an infinity of time at our disposal. The principle of memento mori serves as a sharp, sobering reminder that all of this, our life, our opportunities, our acquisitions, our attachments, even the very problems that seem so huge to us today, has an expiration date and will ultimately pass. If you deeply understand that every day could be your last, that you are not living in eternity but in a temporal flow, the value of many things that you are used to worrying excessively about and suffering over, minor conflicts, the desire to accumulate even more material things, the urge to gain universal approval, worry about what could have been, sharply decreases. What will remain truly important and significant when you face the inevitability of your departure? Only how you lived your life, whether you manifested wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance in your actions, whether you used your unique gift of reason, whether you were true to yourself and your principles, whether you treated others with kindness and justice. Seneca, in his works, urged, "Each day learn to die." This does not mean sinking into gloomy thoughts about the physical end, but rather daily training in the art of letting go. Letting go of control over what is not within our power, Principle 1. Letting go of attachments to what is temporary and can be lost, Principles 3 and 4. Letting go of resentments, indignation, and regrets that lose all meaning and power in the face of eternity and the inevitability of the end. It is a disciplined training in the readiness to calmly and worthily accept the end of life whenever it comes, without fear or resistance. Because you have lived your life focusing on what truly matters, on developing your character and manifesting virtue. Such a meaningful attitude towards death strips it of a significant part of its frightening power and frees us from the paralyzing fear of it, which, incidentally, often lies at the root of many of our other fears and anxieties. Memento mori is not a gloomy but a liberating practice, aimed at concentrating on what is essential. Reflection on mortality helps to see more clearly what is truly important in our short, precious life. It is not the quantity of accumulated things, not the level of achieved status, not recognition by other people, but what kind of people we were, how we treated others, and how we used our time. It is a powerful reminder not to postpone what is truly important for later, the manifestation of love, courage, honesty, meaningful action, because that later may simply not exist. What is important in the Stoic understanding is to act virtuously here and now, linked to Principle 5, and to appreciate the moments, the relationships, and the opportunities we have now, without excessive, painful attachment to their eternal preservation. The practice of memento mori can take various forms. In the evening, before sleep, you can dedicate a few minutes to reflection. If today were the last day of my life, would I be satisfied with how I lived it? Did I act in accordance with my highest principles? Were my actions meaningful and virtuous? This retrospection of the day helps to evaluate it not by external indicators, how many tasks were done, how much money was earned, how many pleasures were gained, but by an internal measure, how much it was lived in accordance with Stoic ideals. Applying this principle can also involve using physical reminders. Wearing a memento mori symbol, e.g., a small skull, an hourglass, a special coin or ring, serves as a constant, albeit unobtrusive, reminder of the finitude of life, helping to maintain the right perspective in the whirlwind of daily concerns. When faced with minor stresses, irritation, anxiety due to insignificant problems, one glance at such a symbol can instantly ask the key question: how important is this really in the grand scheme of an entire life, which is so short? Is it worth spending my limited strength, time, and peace of mind worrying about this, when every moment is precious? This helps to instantly let go of petty, futile worries and reorient oneself to what truly has deep, lasting significance. Principle 7. Practice self-discipline through daily exercises. The seventh and concluding principle in this list emphasizes that Stoicism is not just a set of intellectual ideas or a collection of theoretical discussions that are enough to understand intellectually. It is primarily a way of life, a path of continuous improvement, requiring consistent, conscious effort and continuous training, both mental and practical. Epictetus, himself an example of perseverance and self-discipline, clearly stated, "No one becomes free without training." Freedom in the deep Stoic sense is not external permissiveness or the absence of limitations, but inner freedom, freedom from the power of external circumstances, from the tyranny of uncontrolled emotions, from slavery to our own unexamined desires and fears. This inner freedom is not given freely, it is achieved only through purposeful self-discipline and systematic, daily exercises. A detailed explanation of this principle often uses the analogy of philosophy with gymnastics or athletic training, but applied to the soul and mind. Just as an athlete daily trains their body, performing exercises to become strong, resilient, and agile, a Stoic trains their mind and character by performing philosophical exercises to become wise, just, courageous, and temperate. Reading the texts of ancient Stoics, reflecting on their ideas, this is only the initial stage, a kind of theoretical preparation. The true mastery of philosophy happens not in the library, but in life itself, through the consistent application of principles in practice and through performing special Stoic exercises aimed at strengthening the mind and will. Marcus Aurelius kept his famous journal, Meditations, precisely as a tool for such daily self-discipline and self-analysis. He did not intend it for publication. These were his personal notes where he daily reminded himself of the principles, analyzed his mistakes, formulated intentions for the future, and tracked his progress in following Stoic ideas, especially during the moments when it was most difficult. Seneca also emphasized the importance of training the will and self-control in small things to prepare oneself for greater trials. He advised consciously practicing temperance and asceticism not only in serious life matters but also in everyday trifles. For example, sometimes voluntarily refusing the most comfortable food, sleeping on a harder bed, wearing simpler clothes, enduring slight cold or discomfort when there is an opportunity to avoid them. Train yourself in small things, so that when necessity comes, you can cope with great things, he wrote. The goal of such exercises is not self-torment or asceticism for its own sake, but the development of inner strength, resilience, and independence from external conditions and comfort. If you can feel calm and good while getting by with little, you become much less vulnerable and fear losing much less. This actively trains the mind to let go of attachments to material comfort and external pleasures, which, as we remember, are indifferent. Principle 3. The practice of self-discipline in Stoicism involves the regular, purposeful performance of Stoic exercises, which should become an integral part of your life, like morning exercises or brushing your teeth. Morning rituals can include a few minutes for reflection on the coming day, on potential difficulties and challenges, premeditatio malorum, for aligning oneself with virtue, for reminding oneself of the dichotomy of control. What is within my power today? What will I focus on? Evening rituals can include an evaluation of the past day from the perspective of manifesting virtue. How did I act? Reflection on mortality, memento mori, analysis of one's reactions to the day's events, and planning how one could or should act better tomorrow. Reading Stoic texts is also an important part of this training, constantly reminding of the principles, deepening understanding, and inspiring their application in life. Applying this principle requires creating a kind of soul training schedule and committing to it. This could be just 10 to 15 minutes in the morning and the same in the evening dedicated to reading, reflection, journaling, or specific practices, e.g., consciously observing one's judgments about surrounding people or events. The key factor is consistency and regularity. Just as physical training brings tangible results only with systematic execution, so too do Stoic exercises require consistency. Over time, thanks to regular practice, these exercises become a habit, and the ability, not to care about the uncontrollable, to calmly accept the inevitable, and to let go of painful attachments becomes not an exhausting effort of will but a more natural state of mind. This is the result of a well-trained inner core, which is formed precisely thanks to self-discipline. Self-discipline is the inner strength that allows one to apply all other Stoic principles even when it is most difficult, when emotions are raging, or external circumstances seem insurmountable. It is what makes Stoicism not just a set of interesting ideas from the past, but a living, transformative philosophy capable of radically improving the quality of our life. In conclusion, the 7 Stoic principles, the fundamental awareness of the dichotomy of control, distinguishing what is within and outside our power, the practice of a more fatty, loving and accepting fate, the relentless cultivation of virtue as the only true good, conscious negative visualization, premeditatio malorum, for preparing the mind, the discipline of living in the present moment. Constant reflection on mortality, memento mori, for setting priorities correctly, and, of course, daily self-discipline and exercises constitute a holistic, interconnected, and powerful system for achieving deep inner peace, genuine freedom, and a meaningful life. They teach us to distinguish what truly deserves our energy and attention and to focus our efforts precisely where we can have influence, to accept the inevitable not as an enemy but as part of our path, to value the qualities of our character above any external goods, to prepare our mind for potential difficulties, thereby reducing fear of them, to live consciously, being fully present in the only reality, the present, to remember the finitude of life so as not to waste it on trifles, and to strengthen our character through constant, systematic practice. Mastering the art of not caring, in the Stoic sense, is not a manifestation of indifference to the world, to other people, or to justice. On the contrary, it is liberation from meaningless, exhausting anxiety, from the fear and frustration that are generated by vain attempts to control the uncontrollable and painful attachment to the temporary and external. It is the art of strategically redirecting one's concern and energy towards what truly matters for our soul, our character, our motives, our meaningful and virtuous actions in the world, our attitude towards what is happening. Letting go, in this context, is not a surrender to difficulties, but an act of inner strength and wisdom, a conscious choice to free oneself from the burden of what does not serve our true good and merely prevents us from living a full, calm, and wonderfully peaceful life, regardless of external circumstances. The path to mastering these principles is not a one-time event, but a lifelong journey of constant practice and self-improvement. Start with one or two principles that seem most relevant, understandable, or accessible to you right now, for example, with the daily awareness of the dichotomy of control in various situations. Gradually, as the first principles begin to take root, implement the others, making them part of your morning and evening routine. Be patient and compassionate with yourself. There will inevitably be mistakes, setbacks, moments of weakness. What is important is the process of striving, training itself, and the readiness to return to the principles again and again, even after failures. Remember the words of the wise emperor who found strength and peace in these principles amidst the chaos of managing a vast empire, wars, and epidemics. You have power over your mind, not over external events. Realize this, and you will find strength. In this deep awareness and subsequent practice lies the key to achieving Stoic freedom, the art of not caring about what is not within our power, and wisely letting go of what prevents us from living a full, calm, and wonderfully peaceful life, regardless of external circumstances.